Hi friends, it's your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and I'm going to continue my recap on the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount campaign, which took place started in the Broken Vale Marshes and took place in the Wastes of Xhorhas, in the Xhorhas Nation. So it's Huckshire and his good friend Sharrock, who is a Dwendalian scout, now disguised as a nomadic outlander, and they have recently reconnected with Cyldi Mirrim, and that is from Den Mirrim, which is one of the 12 ruling dens in Rosanna. Okay, and so they are now in the city. They have reached the city of Bright Queen Leilas, and so Huckshire has reconnected with Cyldi Mirrim. And Cyldi Mirrim is she is the daughter of Yolna Mirrim, and she's from the Gallimaufry, which so she's a high-end noble, right? But she's play cousins with Huckshire, and they would play when they were very young. And so Cyldi says, takes them out of the Coronas and is taking them back to the Gallimaufry, where they have one of the many mansions that Den Mirrim controls. And Cyldi says, listen, Huckshire, I'm so glad you're coming back, but what I think we should do is we're going to return. You're in the city, you just arrived. I can put you up in the Gallimaufry, in one of our mansions in the Gallimaufry, where I will be staying, and we can catch up, and I could learn while you're here in the city. But I actually think it's quite dangerous for you to be anywhere in the city, and I think you need to understand that. And so basically, at that point, she says, but I think you need to understand that it is dangerous for you in the city. And Huckshire's like, well, why is it dangerous? And he said, well, because your family has so much power. And Huckshire's like, again, why do you think we have power? And she's like, your father is the most powerful, respected, he is the most powerful, respected Luxon Drow commander ever, right? And Sharrock's like, and Huckshire says, that's incredible. I'm just astonished that you believe that is true, right? Because the reality is, my dad hasn't made any, command decisions for like almost 15 years, right? Like, we've been living in the Broken Vale for a while, right? And she's like, well, I can tell you right now, once a week, and she said, like I said, your mother is getting your father to run through battle plans, and then every single week, moving those battle plans into, and she's been doing this for at least 10 years, right? And she's been, moving those plans into the military mechanisms under. I don't know if Bright Queen Leilas understands that that's where those commands are coming from, but my mother does, and so your mother and my mother have figured out a way. And Huckshire's like, well, yeah, I know how she's doing it. She is playing war games with him every week. I know that because I actually help her set up, and it's very complicated. And so she is absolutely playing war games with my father, which are clearly modeled on the real Dwendalian, but the real Dwendalian war between the Dwendalian Kryn war. The only thing I don't understand is how she's communicating that to your mother, right? And so Cyldi's like, well, the reality is you need to understand that your family is extremely powerful. Like, you just need to understand that, right? And he's like, okay, I understand that, and I'm glad I'm here because I didn't know any of this. And I think maybe this is why my father and my mother agreed for me to come, maybe so that I would and I will say right now, I'm a little confused because I don't know how my father would feel if he found out what my mother was doing, right? And Sharrock looks at like Huckshire like, oh man, we are in the thick of it, man. And they're like, Huckshire is like, so Cyldi's like, okay, listen, I'm going to bring you into my Gallimaufry mansion, but you definitely do not want to talk to my mother, because if my mother finds out you're here, one, she would never harm you, right? But my mother is a power player, and you need to understand, if you get anywhere close to her, she absolutely will, she'll use you in her machinations, right? And so then Sharrock says directly to Cyldi, he's like, Cyldi, how do you stop your mother from using you in her machinations? And Cyldi gets a huge smiler on her face, and she also, like, and actually Huckshear notices this, that for the first time there's almost like a spark that goes between the two of them, because Cyldi feels seen by Sharrock. Sharrock is going, well, clearly your mother, you're not controlled by your mother. And Cyldi goes, that's correct. I am not controlled by my mother. I have free reign, right? And the reason why, and then she says, and the reason I have free reign is I have built a family in the Coronas. I am much beloved in the Coronas. I've used my mother's extra food and my mother's extra wealth, and I've given so much of it away in the Coronas to the poor Luxandrows and the poor Xhorhas goblins and the poor Xhorhas orcs and the poor Xhorhas ghosts. Right, even in the even in the hallowed, even around the hallowed paths, right? That I'm much beloved, and I have a new home there. I only go back to Gallimaufry to make my mother happy. She needs to see me 2-3 times a week, but I spend less time in Gallimaufry now than I do in the Coronas, right? So she knows that I no longer need her hospitality or her wealth. I've built a family outside my own family. And Sharrock's like, nods and is quite impressed and is like, oh, that is very impressive. I'm impressed that you've been able to do this, right? And so Cyldi's like, and there's definitely a moment between Cyldi and Sharrock, right? Even though he's a human Dwendalian, which she doesn't know yet. She knows he is not a nomadic outlander from Xhorhas, but she doesn't know that he's a human Dwendalian scout from a merchant family there. But even though it's a human and a Luxandrel, there's a moment there, and Huckshear notices it, right? And so then, so Cyldi says, now it will not be any problem at all for me to bring you into our mansion, either you, Sharrock, or you, Huckshear. And she said, the reason why is I guarantee you that my mother doesn't know what you look like anymore, Huckshear. And while I noticed you, I can guarantee you are not the kind of person my mother generally pays attention to. She's not going to pay attention to, a blood rose gardener, right? So you're safe. And Sharrock, nobody knows who you are here, so you're safe as well. And in addition to that, I often bring back wounded or injured or people who are just suffering from the Coronas, and I often have guests. So both they won't even think twice that I have guests that have come. So at this point, they all go. She receives them in Gallimaufry, in the Gallimaufry. She receives them into the Gallimaufry mansion, and then they actually sleep the night, and then the next day she brings them out into a beautiful elevated like a balcony where they can all have breakfast, right? And she says, the servants who are going to serve me are she's like, we can have a conversation here. I've asked the servants to bring our breakfast and then give us some privacy so we can have a conversation. So Huckshear, why are you here? Why have you come to Rosanna, right? And he said, well, Aber, who was a nomadic outlander, and Cyldi literally says, unlike your friend here, Sharrock, and Sharrock kind of frowns, right? Like, because he's been trying to like pose as a nomadic outlander. And he says, well, Aber died bringing me here. And the reason why Aber wanted me to come here is he told my father, Tallane, and my mother, Foxloff, that he believes that a black dragon has come to the city of Rosanna and is currently living near the city of Rosanna, right? And Cyldi goes, "Oh, that's absolutely true. There is 100% a black dragon that is living in the city. There's an underground. Bright Queen Leilas has created a huge underground lair for that very black for that exact black dragon that you just said." And like both Sharrock and Huckshire look at each other like, "Oh my gosh, we came here to find out, and we just found out," right? Like, and so Sharrock says, "Why? And so Cyldi says, "Well, I know this because of the power of my family, and almost all of Bright Queen Leilas's plans are an open book to Den Mirrim, my mother, Yolna. They openly discuss her plans, and my mother is completely dedicated to completing the plans of Bright Queen Leilas. And the reason that Black Dragon is here is that Bright Queen Leilas dedicated 6 wizards to luring it here, and they had a lair built for it. And the reason she's brought it here is she wants to build a black rainbow. She wants to draw 5 dragons here, a black rainbow of dragons, not chromatics, but black, white, silver, and then 2 more colors, which I'm drawing a blank on right now. I have it written down, because I was really blown away by the Gold Dungeon Masters. I thought this was a really cool aspect of what he had created. And she said, and the black dragon is the first, and she wants to build, and she's building an air attack wing. She wants to be able to attack Dwendalia with a flight of dragons. But right now, Yolna, my mother, has been telling her, don't wait until you have all 5. Begin attacking Dwendalia with the black dragon right now, right? And so that is, what they've been working on, and my mother and my mother and Bright Queen Leilas are currently in disagreement, and she's saying that they don't have enough control over the black dragon, and that is absolutely true, because the black dragon has been feeding on Xhorhas citizens, which some of the other dens are upset about, but at this point, Bright Queen Leilas is not upset about that, and my mother is not upset about that, because they're saying that the loss of Xhorhasian citizens is not even 1/100th of the lives that will be saved if this is successful, right? So they're all in agreement that that they should keep this, right? And so at that point, Huckshire says, well, what if Bright Queen Leilas used riders to make sure that they could control the dragon? And Cyldi says, you can't ride a dragon, right? And Huckshire says, well, I watched Aber ride a Gloomstalker, which is exactly the same size and which is exactly the same shape as a dragon, and pretty much the same temperament. And I saw how he rode him, and you absolutely can get a rider onto a dragon, right? Because it's no different than a Gloomstalker, right? And Cyldi laughs out loud. She's like, that's ridiculous, right? Like, she's like, you can't ride a beast that's 10 times your size, right? And Huckshire says, then he laughs at her, and he says, of course you can ride a beast that's 10 times your size. I ride Horizon turtlebacks throughout the Broken Vale marshes all the time, right? And Cyldi's like, you think you could ride a black dragon? And Huckshire's like, I don't think I could ride a black dragon. I know I could ride a black dragon. I watched Aber ride a Gloomstalker, which is exactly the same type of creature as a black dragon. And I am adept at riding creatures that are larger than me. I know I could ride a black dragon, right? And so Cyldi's like, so you're saying that if I took you to my mother, you could take that black dragon and attack Dwendalia directly with that black dragon, right? And Huckshire says, of course, yeah, I could do it tomorrow night, right? And Cyldi's like, Well, guess what? By noon today, you'll be talking to my mother, right? And so Huckshire says, that's great. It's been a long time. I ain't seen your mother in a decade. I'm glad I have something to offer her, right? And Sharrock looks at Huckshire and is like, oh my gosh, right? Did you just say you're going to attack, my hometown directly, or like my home nation directly? And Huckshire's like, nods back. And that's where we're going to wrap it. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing and have a fetch millennium.